Hey friends, welcome into the Leadership Sandbox. Today I want to challenge a belief that I think changes the way we lead people. And here's the statement: behavior never lies. It never does. It's simply the evidence of identity. And now before you disagree with me, I want you to stay there for a minute. I just want you to ponder that thought because I'm going to shift some perspective, I think, today in this episode. Because, every day as leaders, we spend an enormous amount of time trying to change people's behavior. We tell someone to communicate better, to take more ownership, to be more accountable, to speak up, to collaborate more, to stop micromanaging, to stop being defensive. And we're constantly trying to coach to the outcome or the behavior that we want to see. But what if behavior isn't actually the problem, which for a moment in the sandbox kind of is mind-blowing because I speak all the time and train all the time to changing behaviors. What if the behavior, however, is simply the evidence of something much deeper? Because behavior always leaves clues. The question isn't, why did they do that? The better question becomes, what belief about themselves produced that behavior? And that's a completely different conversation in the sandbox. James Clear, who's the author of Atomic Habits, if you haven't read it yet, pick it up. It's great. You want to read it. He says it this way: every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Wow. Sit with that. Put that on the whiteboard for a minute. Every action that you take is a vote in the direction for the person you wish to become. So if your outcomes are not producing what you want, then you're producing the person you also don't want. I love that because every repeated behavior is reinforcing an identity in you or for that other person in the office, not just creating a habit, but reinforcing a belief about self, about others. Let's take someone who never speaks up in meetings as an example. Most leaders look at that behavior and say that they're disengaged, they're shy, they're lacking, or they need time to properly process, or they're not prepared. Maybe that is true, but what if it's not? What if the identity underneath says, my ideas don't matter, my voice doesn't matter, or every time I speak up, I get shut down, I get turned back, or the safest thing I can do is stay quiet? Do you hear the difference though? The behavior is silence. The identity is self-protection. If all I do is coach the behavior, I might say, I'd really like you to participate more if I'm their leader. But if I coach to the identity, my conversation changes. When did you decide that your voice wasn't value? Better way of saying that is, so I'm really curious. I've noticed that you don't speak up a lot in meetings. And what makes me curious is I'm wondering when you decided that your voice wasn't valuable here. Tell me what happens in the room that makes it difficult for you to contribute. And what would need to change for you to feel safe sharing your perspective? In that moment, leader, you're getting somewhere because behavior gives us evidence. Identity gives us understanding. And here's another one for you. Think about the leader who micromanages everything. Can I see some hands in the back of the room, please? That's you I'm talking to. That one who micromanages everything, we usually label as controlling. But I don't think that control is the issue. I think control is the symptom. It's what's underneath. The identity underneath often says, I'm not needed. If I'm not needed, I don't have value. If I'm not needed, I don't have value. Or if someone else makes a mistake, it reflects on me. Or maybe no one can do it as well as I can, might be one of the other storylines. Again, the behavior isn't lying. It's revealing something underneath. And I see this with accountability a lot too. Someone who misses deadlines over and over and over again, even when you give them really clear by when, someone blames everyone else because It's always got to be somebody else. I can never look in the mirror and take full responsibility. And someone gets defensive every time they receive feedback, or someone who refuses to admit that they're wrong. We focus on correcting the action, but I wonder, what if identity is that behavior protecting them, right? What identity is that behavior that is protecting them? Because people will defend an identity far longer than they will defend a goal. And that's why some people can't hear feedback. They reject it profusely. If their identity says being wrong means I'm a failure, then feedback doesn't feel like information. It feels like a threat. And threatened people don't learn, they protect. That's human behavior. So now I want to make it personal, because before we point at our teams, we've got to point at ourselves. We got to turn the point around. How many times have you said something like, I'm just not good at difficult conversations. I'm not strategic. I'm not creative. I'm terrible with numbers. I'm just wired that way. Really? But are you? Or is that an identity you've rehearsed so many times that you've mistaken it for truth? Because identities become our comfort zone, and comfortable ideas become our cages. And one of my favorite questions to ask leaders is this: what identity are you protecting that your leadership can no longer afford? That question usually creates a pause of silence, but the good kind. Because I've got someone at a heart level. It's the kind where people stop defending themselves and start thinking. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. Organizations create identities whether they mean to or not. A company may never say, don't challenge leadership. But if every person who challenges leadership gets embarrassed, gets shut down, gets ridiculed in meetings, people quickly learn who they need to become to survive. And an organization may never say, stay quiet, don't speak up. But if ideas get ignored, silence becomes the safest. It's the safest identity in the room. And you may say in your meetings that you value innovation, but if mistakes are punished and ridiculed, people begin identifying as cautious instead of courageous. Think about that. If mistakes are punished, people will start to identify as cautious instead of courageous. Remember about failing forward? It's such a great thing that we want to encourage people to do, because risk taking helps us all get stronger. But if our identity is locked into it's not safe, we're not going to do it. That's why I always say behavior is data. It's evidence. If your team won't speak up, don't immediately coach to communication. Ask yourself what identity your environment has been rewarding. If your leaders won't make decisions, don't just teach decision-making skills. Ask what identity has been reinforced every time someone took a risk. This is one of the reasons why I built Command, the Leadership Behavior Operating System. The first step is C, claim reality. Behavior is reality, not assumptions, not intentions, observable behavior. But once we've claimed reality, you want to become curious, because every repeated behavior is asking us to investigate what's underneath it. And that's where real leadership begins, friends, not in correcting people, but in understanding them. And today I'm going to leave you with this. This week, instead of asking, how do I fix that behavior? How do we fix that behavior? Ask, what belief about themselves, that individual, is producing this behavior? And while you're at it, ask yourself the same question and take a look in the mirror, because your behavior is telling a story too. The question is it the story you want your leadership to tell? Thanks for joining me in the sandbox today, friends. I know that leadership isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you grow into. And this episode gave you the opportunity to grow into that next level today. And if it challenged your thinking, I want you to share it with another leader who spends more time correcting behavior than understanding it. because that's where real change in organizations is going to start to happen, at the belief level. Until next time, remember that behavior never lies. It simply reveals what we've come to believe about ourselves. Lead well, lead boldly. God bless you. Make it a great day, friends.